You kind of touched on this a little bit answering your previous question.
Mm-hmm.
And this is coming, oh, by the way, my name is Alex.
Hi, Alex.
This is coming from me as a non-religious person. So this
Mhm.
is coming from like genuine curiosity.
Sure.
So with conversion experiences, would you say that there's like single determining factor that's common between people who either convert to Christianity or convert to Islam or any of those religions?
I think that there is some level to which people have an experience that can be summed up in an idea of like a religious ecstasy. People do have that sense of an ecstasy. Oftentimes they do that even politically. People change their views and they have this like, oh my goodness, I thought this and now I've suddenly seen the light, and they change their mind. Happens all the time. So yeah, I think that there is a commonality in the way people experience certain things. But Alex, I don't think that the experience of a common experience, therefore actually means that they've experienced something true. They can experience something and it gives them some form of religious ecstasy. Happens all the time. People have that level of like ecstatic experience. Whether, like I said, politically, mathematically, you ever have the experience where you suddenly got it, and you have this weird, like, even endorphin rush with these things? You can have it with regard to exercise. You can have it with regard to a million things. It doesn't necessarily mean they're all equally valid or equally invalid. Their experience is not what counts. One of the things that I think unique to the Christian faith is that unlike some other faiths, and some other faiths actually trade on an ecstatic experience, they would say stuff like, you know it's true because you feel it. Well, that's not an objective way to look at anything. And by the way, you'll notice something. If you look in the Bible, you will never find that to be the case. You will never see on the lips of Jesus, you will know it's true because you have this warm fuzzy. It's just not there. Now, it doesn't mean that the warm fuzzies don't happen. It just doesn't, what it means is that the Christian faith actually doesn't hinge the truth of the conversion experience based on how you feel about that conversion experience. In fact, the Apostle Paul specifically says in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, if Jesus is not risen from the dead, then the dead are not raised, and everyone is still dead in their sins. And we are of all people to be most pitied because our faith is worthless. So in distinction to so many other faiths where it's based on, do you feel enlightened? Do you feel this religious ecstasy? Do you feel some sort of connection with the divine? In contradistinction to all of that, the Apostle Paul says, if they can pull out Jesus' bones, stop believing it. It is the only faith where there's an objectivity to it. In fact, Jesus does this. In John chapter 2, they asked him, who do you think you are? What authority do you think you have to say and do the things you're doing? He says, destroy this body. He says, destroy this temple, meaning his body, and I will raise it up again in 3 days. Either true or false. Has zero to do with feelings. Zero. So either that tomb is empty or it was full. And it was empty. And that's a verifiable historical fact. And it's not the wrong tomb. There's a number of reasons why we can believe it's not the wrong tomb. They got the right tomb. It just happened wasn't there because you walked out of there. So I think that's the answer is yes, there is a commonality. Absolutely, 100%. Don't doubt that for a minute. It has zero to do with the truth of the religion you are so ecstatic about. It has zero to do with it because feelings do, you hear that phrase? Facts don't care about your feelings. You've heard that, right? And it's true. Facts don't conform to our feelings. However, here's what I'll say. This is interesting, is that as a Christian, I turn that phrase on its head. Because if it's true that he rose from the dead, and if it's true that, and I think there's great philosophical reasons for believing that God is the source of all creation. And I'll give that to you just in a second. I just wrote it down very, very quickly, Alex, is that you have people like Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz and a bunch of different philosophers who are asking the question, why is there something rather than nothing? Why does anything exist at all? Because everything is contingent. You're contingent, I'm contingent, the laptop is contingent, the air we breathe is contingent. It requires something beyond itself to explain itself. The universe itself could have been smaller, could be bigger, who knows? It doesn't have to be here. And from standard Big Bang cosmology, we know that it actually began to exist at a finite point in the past. We know this. So that means that everything is explained by a prior cause. But you can't have an infinite regress of causes. You can't have an infinite regress, and the reason you can't have that is because here we are now. I mean, this basic math. If now is moment 0, and we have a timeline of integers, and every integer is a moment in the past, so the moment that just passed was -1, and then before that, -2, -3, and it goes back into infinity. If it goes back into infinity, if the past goes back into infinity, you could never start counting up to now. But here we are, now. So there can't be an infinite regress of causes. So everything has to begin from a timeless, eternal cause. They're just logically, deductively so. So if everything begins from a timeless, eternal cause, an uncaused cause, and that thing seems to have made choices, a la the DNA evidence we saw earlier, or the way the universe is constructed, then it looks like an immaterial, enormously powerful, spaceless, timeless, and ultimately intelligent being created everything. That sounds a lot like God. So then what that means, Alex, is that God is the seminal fact. Every other fact depends upon him, and so he is the grounding of all of existence. And here's where I think this whole thing turns on its head. Facts don't care about your feelings, meaning they don't change based on your feelings. But the ultimate fact, who is God, cares so deeply about our feelings that he actually engages in the world in a tangible way to conform our feelings to reality and then recognize our sense of a need for something bigger than ourselves, a connectedness, and that's what the cross is all about. So, yeah, it's a great question. I realize it's a shorter question that I answered, but I think the implication I want to make sure we leave with is that common experience doesn't mean common truth. And I think the Christian faith has more credibility to it based on its reliance not on feelings, but on logic and on history. Thank you for your question. Really appreciate it.